Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today we're gonna make a pudding gun. This project's a little bit different for me because there's basically no material preparation. There's no cutting or grinding or anything like that. It's just assembling the parts. So let's look at all the stuff that goes into this and how it fits together, then we'll put it together and try it out. These are basically all the components we're going to use to put this together, and most of the pipes are really just here to take it from one size down to a smaller size. All of these pipes are going to get threaded together using some Teflon tape. Now there's a few other items we got to look at. This is a vacuum pump that runs on 12 volts. It takes air in through one of these and out through the other, so you can fill something up or you can pull air out of something if you want to. This is also 12 volts. This is a solenoid valve, so you can open and close the valve with electricity. Basically, this is going to be our trigger. And this just helps us keep an eye on how much pressure we have in the gun. We don't want to overdo it, but we also want to make sure that pressure is being held as we blow it up. All right, let's put it together. I wrapped all of these threads in Teflon tape, and there's actually a correct way to put this on, which is not the way I did it, so be warned that you should start with the outer thread and work your way in and up. Regardless, I connected the pieces to get from a 2-inch pipe all the way down to a 1/4-inch tip, and that's what goes into the solenoid valve. These pieces all need to be fully threaded in, so I made sure to use wrenches or pipe wrenches or whatever I needed to get them nice and tight. This barbed end is where the hose is going to go to feed air into my gun. The whole idea of this was that I would have a standalone gun that just had power running to it. The power would drive the pump, which would fill up the canister, which would then let me shoot out the air. Well, in the end, that ended up not working out, and we'll get to why in just a minute. When you're threading up the solenoid valve, be very careful because it is plastic, whereas everything else is metal. So if you tighten down too hard, you're going to crack the casing, and you don't want that. The last piece to thread on was the barrel, and that's really just a thinner piece of pipe. The length is totally up to you based on how much pudding you want to be able to shoot at one time. This is how it looked pretty much all put together. Then it was time to test it. So the vacuum pump is hooked up. I went to test it to see if it was working, and I'm not getting very much pressure in there. So here's how I'm gonna figure out where the problem is. I just covered all the joints with some soapy water. So when air leaks out, it creates some bubbles to show you exactly where the leak is. Simple enough, so that tells me which coupling needs to be taken apart, retaped, and tightened up. So I took these apart and added some more tape, and I did it on all the joints in that area, not just the ones that I saw leaking, just to be safe. Even retaping and tightening these, I'm still getting some leaks. So I'm gonna take these apart, I'm gonna go back and put it together, but I'm gonna use some joint compound on it, and that should help seal it up a little bit. We'll see, let's try it out. Just to be safe, I took everything apart, added joint compound and tape where necessary, and put everything back together. And it took quite a while, but it was totally worth it because it sealed it up perfectly. I connected one wire from the power supply to one side of the vacuum pump and one side of the solenoid valve. The other side of the valve connected to a momentary switch, which then had another wire coming out of it. This is going to be the trigger. I added an on and off switch to the other side of the vacuum pump. Then the switch's remaining wire, the button's remaining wire, and the power supply's remaining wire all got connected together. I wrapped all the connections in electrical tape and then ran a rubber hose from the back of the gun to the pump. I flipped the switch to turn on the pump, and it did create some pressure, but not enough. The button to release the pressure worked great for the valve, so that was awesome. I decided to remove the pump entirely and instead hook this up to my air compressor. The threads are the same size, so it was a really easy switch to make. I just screwed in a new fitting and then hooked it up directly to the compressor. It was able to create a lot more pressure. I removed the pump entirely from the wiring and then just hooked up the power supply directly to the button and to the valve. I used the electrical tape again to wrap the connections, but then also to hold the button in place on the valve and then hold the wires to the body. Then I went to the kitchen and made an assortment of puddings and jellos. The joint compound wasn't dry yet, and it kind of gets on your hands if it's not dry, so I decided to wrap the entire thing in duct tape both to cover that up and just to make it look cooler. So after all that trial and error, here's what I ended up with. To fill the barrel, I unscrewed it from the body, used some marshmallows as packing and blew it all the way down to the bottom. Then I used a pastry syringe to squirt in the pudding, making sure that I filled it up all the way to the top. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say about this project. It's really silly, but it was a lot of fun. And if you want to see some more serious projects, I've got lots of other videos for you to check out. Don't forget to subscribe. And I have a second channel with some non-project related stuff. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Pretty good pudding.